we'll throw up Matt's big board first. So, Matt, if you could walk us through your thought process here.
Okay, so how we laid it out, we're going to do a trade up group, stick and pick group, and also a trade down grouping. Now, anyone who is listed in the pick 10 group, I am also okay with moving down and getting those guys, contingent on if they're going to actually be available or not at that point. But I have Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt, and Malik Neighbors as the top 3 in that order for the trade up. And honestly, if there was like a trade up God level tier, it'd be Marvin Harrison 1, and then like just a regular trade up, very excited tier for Alt and Neighbors. For stick and pick at 10, I have Furtanu over Odunze, which is probably a hot take. I get it. I'm not against Odunze. I just really love Furtanu's flexibility, and I think him being able to play 4 different positions on the offensive line would really come in handy for this team because, well, they played 13 different offensive linemen last year. They're relying on 2 33-year-old starting tackles, one of which is coming off a torn pectoral and surgery. The other hasn't played a full season since 2015. And like, I don't know, I think Furtanu could even give John Simpson a run for his money at left guard to start in year 1. And then I have Fuanga over Bowers as well. Also probably a hot take for some, but I know a lot of people have cooled on him after the Morgan Moses trade because he kind of projects more as someone on the right side of the line. But with his guard tackle flexibility, I still really like him a lot as a prospect. And Fashanu is another one that I'm good with. The last grouping, the trade down, I think if they were to stick and pick Brian Thomas Jr. at 10, I would view it as a reach. But if you move down and grab him and pick up, additional capital, I think I'd be much more excited about that route. The only one on my list here at number 10 that I'm not in love with is Latham. The top not, but to have a top 9 that you're pretty much saying, I'm good if any of these 9 players are taken in the first round. I feel like that's a pretty good problem to have, but I explained a little earlier in the show, I worry a little bit about Latham's size and durability at the next level. Who knows? Maybe I view him as a boom or bust player, and that worries me after the Jets took a boom or bust player in Mekhi Becton. So he's not my favorite of the tackle options, but at number 5 on the tackle board, he comes in at number 10 on my list for my big board for the Jets.
Dante comes in the super chat, says, please, for the love of all gods, Jets, don't pick Bowers. Didn't we already do this before Kyle Brady? Yeah, that might not be fair. The game's totally different now. I think you heavily rely on the tight end position. You look at the final 4 teams in the playoffs, and they all have elite level tight ends. Not to say that you have to take one at number 10, but I think if you were to redraft those 4 particular players and you hit the evaluation process correctly, they're all worthy of a top 10 pick. So if you think Bowers is in that same conversation and you're confident in your scouting ability, I think he's absolutely worth a top 10 pick. There's never been a tight end that's won the Mackey Award twice in a row. Guy's been all SEC like every year that he's been there. Bowers is definitely impressive. I would not be upset with that selection whatsoever. All right, so we'll go over to my big board. Then we'll go over to Beans. So how I mapped it out is I would be excited if we traded up for Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. Either one of them I'm, green light for. And the way I sort of like rationalized it in my head is like, if we were to trade up to number 5 and Joe Alt was the selection, there would be like a little bit of a letdown for me. It'd be like, man, it's not Neighbors and it's not Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I guess you could argue if Alt falls to like 8 or something like that and you wanted to leapfrog the Bears, then maybe you consider it that way. For me, I think there's a path to Alt potentially making it to number 10. And it would have to involve the Titans going with like Latham or another tackle that is not Joe Alt. Maybe they prefer the right side or something along those lines. But I'm also team weapon. I've been very open about that. I do want a weapon in the first round. And Alt falling to 10, I'm more likely to take him at that point. I love the player. There's a point in time where would have been happy to trade up for him, but now that you got Moses and Tyron Smith, I would say I'm less hyped up on trading up additional assets to get a guy that, makes Morgan Moses a backup for some reason. I think that's probably where I fall on that. Then I would go Rome Odunze over Brock Bowers. Like Matt mentioned before, I do think there is a really solid chance that 𝐻𝐭𝐬 falls to 10. And the way that happens is you see the four of the quarterbacks go. You see the Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors go off the board. You have Alt go 7 to the Titans, defensive player to the Falcons at 8, and then whatever the Bears do. If the Bears trade out, I don't know if someone's coming up for 𝐻𝐭𝐬 at number 9. I think it's more likely to be a quarterback because of the Vikings, Broncos, and Raiders just behind us. And then I think the other option is maybe the Bears could go defensive line. I've said it before, Mock Draft Database has put out 41 mock drafts since March 1st. And it's not just Mock Draft Database. They aggregate a whole bunch of, mock drafts from a bunch of different fan sites and things like that and popular publications. And 56% of the picks have been defensive linemen for the Bears at 9. Only 12% of the time has 𝐻𝐭𝐬 been picked in those like fan mock drafts, and they're Bear fans. If their team's saying like, hey, this is kind of the direction I'd like to see, I think there's at least the potential they could go Jared Verse there or Dallas Turner. Then 𝐻𝐭𝐬 falls to the Jets at 10, and that would be my pick. Now, in the event 𝐻𝐭𝐬 goes 9, I'm all on board with Brock Bowers. I think he is an electric player. The yak yardage that he gets will help Aaron Rodgers in such a big way. God forbid the offensive line falls to pieces or someone gets hurt. You're going to need a safety valve to get the ball out fast. Look at Miami's offensive line. They were not a really good offensive line. They got the ball out in 2 seconds flat, and it prevented edge rushers from bearing down on Tua Tagovailoa. So I think you could try to operate in the same capacity with Aaron Rodgers, get the ball out fast, and then you have Bowers come in. And to that same extent with 𝐻𝐭𝐬 and Williams on the outside with Garrett Wilson in the slot is friggin' scary. Free releases all day for Garrett Wilson is like incredibly sexy for me. So that's why the 𝐻𝐭𝐬 Bowers back to back there. Now I struggled a little bit with 𝐓𝐻_NOW. I'd be fine if 𝐓𝐻𝐻_NOW is the pick at 10. I would prefer him a little bit in a trade down. And you could even I would say Bowers and 𝐓𝐻𝐻�now are kind of like flip-floppy for me as far as like stick and pick at 10 or wanting to trade down and still select them. But I decided to put it down because, again, I don't particularly want to go O-line in the first round at 10. You trade down, you add an additional third or a second round pick. I am probably more on the side of offensive line than weapon in the first round if you were to get a second round pick. So if you get, then that's where you fall into the Troy 𝐓𝐻𝐻�now, Talese Fuaga. Those are the guard tackle hybrids, like Matt mentioned before. That's what I really value right now, that positional flexibility, because I think Moses at $5.5 million on that 1-year deal could be a swing tackle. I think John Simpson on his deal could be a backup. I could see AVT kicking over if you want to take exclusively a right guard, like an AVT winds up playing left guard. I don't think we actually finally know where AVT is currently playing until after the draft when we get closer to training camp. But, obviously as we pencil it all out, where guys played in the past, right guard seems to make the most sense for AVT. Brian Thomas Jr. would be my other player that I would like in a trade down if Fataanu and Fuaga are not there, because I view them as that positional flexibility. Brian Thomas Jr. at 6'3", running a 4.3 40 is absolutely electric. I don't know why he's not being talked about a little bit higher than where we currently have him, which is somewhere around the 15, I think to 20 range is where I've seen him go most frequently. I really like him a lot. I think team weapon is where I would like to be. And if the top 2 offensive linemen that I have on my board, or I guess top 3 are gone, he would be my selection. And then for my pick 9 and pick 10 would be J.C. Latham. And I'll be honest, I almost did not have Fashanu on this list. I almost put Amarius Mims because I think he could be left or right tackle. And I think there's a certain level of interest for me in him because of that. There's also something weird for me about Fashanu's hands. They're awkwardly small for some reason compared to every other offensive tackle in this class, and I have no idea if that matters at all for offensive linemen, but it's just a weird anomaly from like a size perspective. So you could swap out Fashanu for Amarius Mims, especially if you're going to have this guy in more of a backup sort of let's groom him perspective. And then if you have someone that could go left tackle, right tackle, then you can decide at the end of the season, we want to bring back Tyron Smith for 1 more year, or, we want to bring back Morgan Moses for 1 more year, and you let the other one go, whichever one you want to do, or however you want to play it. That's sort of how I mapped out my particular top 10 big board right here. All right, let's go over to Green Bean's big board. I want to hear his thoughts on this. Bean, walk us through.
All right. Well, I'm changing it up top from you guys. I have Marvin Harrison, Joe Alt, and Malik Neighbors as the guys. Looks exactly the same to me. I will say this: I am not a fan of a trade up. I think the idea that the Jets are going to trade to 5 for a second round pick next year is poppycock. Okay, I say that in respect to the picture we just saw. It makes me want to use a word like poppycock. So I think there is no way in hell if the Jets can trade up to 5 for a second round pick next year, you giggle as you accept it. You giggle and play footsie handsies with your friends. Oh my God, I can't play. That's chump change for a move like that. I would do it every day of the week if that's your number one player at the position you want. So I think the only guys that are worthy of it, in my opinion, for the Jets would be Marvin Harrison Jr., Joe Alt, and Malik Neighbors. But again, that's not what I want the Jets to do. I think you sit right where you are. I don't want to see us use next year's first to get up and kind of leave us with a vacuum for next year. I think we've done enough in free agency. We have enough capital to to be able to add good players, and a trade back would be my preferred. So anyway, those are the players that I have up there for obvious reasons. But I don't want to do it. I think we're going to watch those guys go to other teams, and it's fine. It happens all the time. You can't take everybody, Ryan. So at pick 10, if we stick and stay, these are the players that I think I would like to see them take. Now, there are other names, like it. Let's say they decided on a Fuanga, which you spelled wrong for me down there, but it's okay.
It
probably because I keep
autocorrects.
saying,
Stupid.
you know why? Because I keep saying Fuaga. So you wanted to just write it the way you want me to say it. I think that's
it's an autocorrect stupid thing. I don't know why. I don't even know what funga is.
Yeah, I know. It's like, sometimes my autocorrect will take a perfectly good word and change it to something I've never seen in my whole life. Like, why did we do that? Happens all the time. So again, I know. Look, J.C. Latham is a name that it's kind of, I wouldn't say polarizing, but there are definitely differing opinions. There are people that love him, and there are people that are like, nah, it's not the guy that I like. And I think that's fine. He has slowly but surely risen as I've watched him. He brings that tenacity that I really like. If the Jets just decided, hey, the trade offers we're getting or whatever, just they're not good enough. We want J.C. Latham. I'd be totally happy with that. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If we did that, I could see Morgan Moses being our backup. I could, again, like I think you mentioned it, Ryan, with $5.5 million. That's not exactly guaranteed starter money. I'm fine with Morgan Moses being the starter, but if you draft a Latham, and this applies to Fatanu as well, there's no rule saying that he can't be beaten out in camp. Now, would that be likely with Aaron Rodgers? We know the whole deal with him not wanting rookies, and okay, fine. But these guys, J.C. Latham and Troy Fatanu, would be slam dunks. Fatanu, as I skipped the other two, Fatanu is interesting because he can back up 4 positions on the line. We joked about it on the mock last night. And who's to say he can't play center? You know what I mean? Like, who's to say? He just doesn't. But I'm sure if we had no centers, rather than, what's his name? Oliver Twist coming in last year. What's his name?
There was Wes Schweitzer, and then I don't know who. It was the guy that didn't take any snaps.
I can't believe I'm not remembering his name because somebody's got it. I
you
just
always
can't
throw
remember.
like a wacky name in there, and it's always close to what it is. I can never remember what it actually is.
Yeah, somebody help me. Somebody help me out.
The chat's got him.
I'm Oliver
Saffold. Havenstein.
Xavier Newman. Holy shit, Oliver. What's wrong with me?
There you go.
Oliver Newman. Hey, thank you. Who did it first? Infrared. Thank you. So, it'd be real. I think if Troy Fatanu came in, he'd figure it out quicker than Xavier Newman did. So I'm not too worried about that. So I'd be totally fine. The truth is I'm kind of leaning Fatanu, even though I have J.C. Latham as a better pick. That idea of having a viable, option to fill in anywhere at any time as a rookie, I think is something that the Jets in our situation that we've been in the last 10 years could really benefit from. He's an exciting player that I'd like to bring on. Rome Odunze, let's look at it like this. So I do lean offensive line. I think that the drop off from the tackle position after that first batch to the third round, assuming we don't get a if we're going to stick at 10 and we don't get a second, the drop off from that batch to 72 is more significant than the wide receivers. I think guys like a Malachi Corley, a Malik Washington, Xavier Worthy, I mean, some of those guys are going to go in the second, but I think there's a nice batch of receivers that are going to be there that could come right in and be your wide receiver 3 or your slot receiver. And have an impact this year. I'm not worried about the weapon thing in this draft. So I'm leaning offensive line for that reason. If the Jets go weapon, I understand that I'm fine with it. If Rome Odunze and Brock Bowers are there, I'm going Rome Odunze, specifically because I feel like our need at wide receiver is significantly greater than our need at tight end. I think they can both be assets in the offense. Adding Rome Odunze to this crew, that contested catch ability, that 6'3", 215-pound wide receiver that Hackett seems, we know that's his type. We're rumored to be going to a more power scheme from our wide zone. I think Rome Odunze fits in there as a wide receiver as well. It's a type. But Brock Bowers, like I've said before, maybe not the guy I would choose, and I'm a tight end whore. I'd be totally happy if we chose him too. So those are the 4 guys. I think if we just stuck right at 10 and took one of those 4 guys, I'd be happy. I'll also add, if any of the top 3 slid into 10, I'd be happy with those too. If we stuck at 10 and pick. So like if Joe Alt happens to slither through and lands at 10, I'm fine with it. Of course. Now a trade down, obviously, depending on how far we go back down. This is my preferred method, by the way. I think that the Jets should be aggressively putting out as many feelers as they can for who wants to jump up. Realistically, you can jump back a few spots and pick up a third. But like I've mentioned before, quarterbacks, guys, are players, is the position that teams are happy to pay for. If they think the guy's within striking distance and all it's going to take is a second round pick, teams are going to do it. So if we slid down, you have this potential quarterback battle right behind us, right, with the Broncos and the Raiders. I think both of them are going to be hoping that a quarterback becomes realistic for them. Yes, the Bears are an option to jump over us and just kind of get it done there. But if we make it to 10 and the Raiders and the Broncos haven't traded up, I think that little battle right there, don't forget they're division rivals too. If they're both going up for the same guy, if it's McCarthy, if it's Penix, I think a second round pick is absolutely realistic. It's not the draft board. They don't realistically stick to draft boards, especially when quarterbacks are in the conversation. So I think the Jets should be looking to do that. You mentioned the Rams at 19. I've been talking about that all offseason. I think that's a realistic trade. Now, the compensation is significantly different. There's a second, there's a third in there. If we gave them a 4th and 10 at 19, you can get their second and third. If you give them like 134 or something, I think is a nice balance there. But if we traded down to any place, I think coming away with JPJ, who in my opinion is in the conversation for the best offensive lineman in the entire draft, just not at the position we're really looking at, most Jets fans. So trading down, grabbing JPJ, Fuanga, or Olu Fashanu would be slam dunks. I'd be delighted with any of those guys. I will add, just as a bonus, if you will, Brian Thomas is in the conversation as well. If in that trade down package, like depending on where we go, right? If we slid down 3 spots, I would rather them go with, one of the offensive linemen there. But But yeah, that's my list, man. I think it's close to your, you guys, a little bit different, but we're all in the same neighborhood. But I think JPJ is a guy that I would be very happy if they added to. Positional flexibility. He's listed as a center, can absolutely play both guard spots. So the whole interior can be backed up by JPJ as well. And he's a mauler that I would love to have on the Jets.
What's up, guys? Matt O'Leary from Talkin' Jets. If you liked that video, please make sure to subscribe and follow for more New York Jets content.